Some of the best and most gripping Korean movies actually take their story from real-life events. From creepy crime stories to the more heartwarming tales, these Korean movies may just surprise you with their true background. Here are 10 Korean movies based on true stories you can't miss out on. 1. Hope. Hope has to be one of the most heartbreaking Korean movies of all time. It was based on one of the most horrifying cases in South Korea, the infamous Cho Do-soon case in 2008. An 8-year-old girl was on her way from school when she was kidnapped, beaten, and raped by a 57-year-old man in a public bathroom and left to die. Fortunately, she survives and is able to call an ambulance. She suffered multiple internal injuries and had to undergo major surgeries. Sowon will have to wear a colostomy bag for the rest of her life. Moreover, once Sowon regains consciousness, she is able to identify her attacker with the help of a psychiatrist. The court sentenced the man to only 12 years in prison, which caused outrage in the country due to the brutality of the crime and the man's history of physical and sexual violence. Sowon exhibited symptoms of PTSD and briefly mistakes her father for her attacker, screaming at him as he tries to fix her colostomy bag. Dong-hoon is heartbroken by this episode, and is further hurt when Sowon refuses to look at him or speak to him. The movie was so heartbreaking. 2. Silenced. Silence tells the story of hearing-impaired students who were sexually and physically abused for years before a newly appointed teacher brings everything to light. In reality, this story is based on actual events that took place at a real school where deaf students were repeated victims of sexual assaults by the principal and other faculty members. It even depicts the later court proceedings that let the faculty off with minimal punishments of 6 months in prison due to how politically powerful the principal was. The real story, however, was much more desperate and hopeless. In the film, 2 girls and 2 boys were sexually abused by 3 of the school's staff, in which the younger one of the 2 boys eventually committed suicide from lying on the railway. On the other hand, in the real incident, a total of more than 10 people have sexually assaulted more than 30 deaf and mute children. These children ages from 7 to 20, which is painfully unbelievable. The movie prompted the immediate shutdown of the school as well as a revised bill that abolished the statute of limitations against sex crimes against minors and the disabled. 3. Midnight. Midnight is a 2021 thriller film that derives its inspiration from Yoo Young-chul, a famous South Korean serial killer, known as the Raincoat Killer, who is known to have killed over 20 victims and ate some of them. The movie depicts a life-threatening hide-and-seek scenario between a psychopathic killer and a deaf woman. On her way back home, the hearing-impaired Kyung-mi witnesses a murder, and now ends up becoming the new target of the serial killer, Do-shik. In order to survive, Kyung-mi tries to run away, but because she can't hear even the mere sounds of the killer's footsteps, it makes it even harder to escape from the murderer. To make matters even worse, the culprit returns bearing a new face, threatening her and her surroundings. Amazingly written, this is one of the best Korean thriller movies out there. 4. The Admiral. The Admiral is the most watched and highest-grossing film of all time in South Korea. The film revolves around the titular Battle of Myeongyang around 1597, which is regarded as one of legendary Joseon Admiral Lee Sun-sin's most remarkable naval victories. Admiral Lee Sun-sin, whose health is failing, was appointed as the commander of 3 provinces during the Japanese invasion. However, all he has are soldiers who lost their fighting spirit, people full of fear, and only 12 ships. He led only 12 ships, which remained in his command, to a heroic victory against an invading Japanese fleet of 333 vessels. The movie was so good it sent chills down the audience spines. 5. Ayla, the Daughter of War. Ayla, the Daughter of War is a Korean-Turkish film that was based on a true life story that took place during the Korean War in 1950. Amidst the ravages of the Korean War, Sergeant Suleiman stumbles upon a 5-year-old half-frozen Korean girl with no parents and no help in sight. Frantic, scared, and on the verge of death, this little girl captures the heart of Suleiman, who risks his own life to save her, smuggling her into his army base and out of harm's way. The two form a friendship despite the language barrier between them, but are torn apart when Suleiman must return home. 6. A Taxi Driver. Based on a real-life story, the film centers on a financially struggling taxi driver from Seoul who unintentionally becomes involved in the events of the Gwangju Uprising in 1980. In 1980, Chun Doo-won, the dictator of South Korea, imposed martial law in an attempt to stifle pro-democracy protests by students and others. A taxi driver in Seoul who is having a hard time paying his bills and providing for his 11-year-old daughter gets a very big offer from a European for a day trip to Gwangju. He steals the job from another cabbie. The customer turns out to be a German journalist who wants to get a film footage to release to the world of the protests in Gwangju, which have turned violent with unarmed people being killed. Most elements regarding the taxi driver's life and the events that happened to him outside of Gwangju are fictional. 7. Ode to My Father. Ode to My Father is a heartwarming tale that depicts South Korean history from the 1950s to the present day through the life of an ordinary man. It is currently the fourth highest grossing film in the history of South Korean cinema, with 14.2 million tickets sold. It tells the story of Deok-soo, a completely ordinary man, who in the face of tumultuous events, marshals extraordinary courage to protect his family. Sticking together, they survive some of modern history's most significant events. As a child, Deok-soo had to say goodbye to his father during a North Korean refugee evacuation amidst the Korean War. His last words to his father were a promise that he would always protect the family. As he matures, that vow leads him to the coal mines of 1960s Germany, and even into the jungle of the Vietnam War. Ode to My Father is a loving look at one family who manages to survive and even thrive. 8. The Last Princess. The Last Princess aired in 2016, revolving around the life of the last princess of the Korean Empire during the Japanese colonial rule. It stars Sun Ye-jin as Princess Deoki. After the death of the king of Joseon, his daughter, a Korean princess, is taken to Japan as a hostage at the age of 13. The film depicts the princess's life in Japan and her struggles to find her way back home and help Korea regain its independence. She later gets reunited with her childhood friend, Kim Jang-han, an officer in the Japanese army who is also part of the Korean independence movement. 9. Battleship Island. Battleship Island is a survival and action movie that aired in 2017. Set in 1944, during the Japanese occupation of Korea. During World War II, about 400 Koreans were conscripted into labor on the Battleship Island. Many were lured by false promises of high wages. But upon arrival, they found that the island turns out to be an isolated hell where the workers are forced into slave labor. As the US launches massive counterattack on Japan, the Japanese decided to blow up the island in order to bury the truth about their awful treatment of the Korean slave laborers. Park discovers the Japanese plan and conspires with Lee and others for mass escape of all 400 Koreans. 10. The Chaser. The dark thriller follows the story of a serial killer being chased by a corrupt former officer who has come into some financial difficulties. Ex-detective Pimp Jong-ho is angry because his girls keep disappearing without clearing their debts. It later turns out that they were victims of a serial killer. The serial killer character is actually based on a real-life, hammer-wielding killer who targeted women before he was finally captured by police. Fun fact, prior to his arrest, the real killer was caught but was released after they thought he was a simple thief. As the police force is obsessed with a random search for corpses, Jong-ho is the only one who believes Mi-jin is still alive. With only 12 hours left to detain the serial killer without a warrant, Jong-ho's hunt begins.
Thank you guys for watching. Do make sure to hit the subscribe button to follow for more movies and drama recommendations.